Hey guys, this is the reading quiz 250 through 265. Um, Jackson's presidency. Individual states this time have decided to allow white men the right to vote. The new states are, as well as some of the older states. Only three states are holding on to not universally allowing males the right to vote, and that's Rhode Island, Louisiana, and Virginia. Excuse me. Um, Suffrage reform is part of this whole democratization of state structures and procedures. There's this growing demand that all white men be treated equally. It helps stimulate the democratic reforms. And it just starts to change where political participation is held by every white man. Um, but in doing so and allowing every white man the availability to vote, it curbs the rights of African Americans, freed African Americans, and women. They, of course, do not have the right to vote at this point. This map here shows how they elect a president, the new states. So, like here, if you're in Louisiana, for example, all the blue ones, whoever gets the most votes chooses the electors to vote for the president in the Electoral College. Missouri and all the orange ones are by who wins in each voting district, and the states can be split. If you have 10 votes in Missouri, 5 can go to one candidate, 5 can go to the other, 6 can go to one, 4 to the other, whatever it may be. Between 1800 and 1840, we have a Second Great Awakening. Remember, we have the First Great Awakening. It shifts the landscape of America. Now, the Second Great Awakening is going to do the same thing. This is going to happen in the West Coast. This is led by Baptists and Methodists, and they support more democratization and encourage evangelical religion that provides a voice through popular culture. Basically, people are getting out, and it starts in the West. And so, you can see the Native American in this picture in the background. They're not ones, people in the West that be to go to church. They trying to survive. When you're worried about your next meal, what your next thing is going to happen, what's going to happen next, what of this, what of that, what of this, what of that. You're not going to go to church. So this gives them a way to travel around, get people to God, and it starts to work that way. It appeals strongly to women and African Americans. However, race and gender limit their access to power. We're in 2020. This was in the 1820s, and we're still talking about 200 years later, where in most churches, I believe it's 68%. Yeah, 68%. I looked it up. 68% here vote, or they are not able to have access, even today in America, to positions of power. The New Democratic Party forms between 1824 and 1828. And they have the perfect candidate. This is the party of today. And Jackson's their guy. He's the guy that, starts from poor origins. He's not a rich, egalitarian guy. He's not elitist, which John Quincy Adams is painted as by Jackson. And so he's the everyday man, the people's champion, for lack of a better term. And he paints John Quincy Adams as out of step with the every average everyday person. And so also for the Democratic Party, Martin Van Buren starts this new idea of creating a political unit that sticks to the discipline and strict adherence to party policies. And he basically creates the Albany Regency, which is the first, quote unquote, there's some arguments there, but the first political machine. He will be the second vice president, to Jackson's first vice president when he wins the election of 1828 was John C. Calhoun from South Carolina. And you can see here that Jackson wins handily. All right, Jackson as president, Jackson appeals to the everyday people. He convinces them that he's using the office to enforce their will. He attacks special privileges, but he also ushers in the spoils system, which the spoils system, here's the vocabulary word, is the awarding of government jobs to party loyalists. Just because you're part of this party, you get the job. That's discrimination. Today, the spoils system is not around today. However, it was back then. Remember the guy who helped John Quincy Adams become president, became John Quincy Adams Secretary of State? That was Henry Clay. Well, Henry Clay had what was known as the American system, and Jackson opposes it. Not because he doesn't believe in it. He believes in tariffs. He believes in buying American and almost all the things that Henry Clay's American system are. It's just that it's made by Henry Clay, and he hates Henry Clay. He also vetoes the Maysville Road Bill, which was written by, you guessed it, Henry Clay. This picture here is great. I love this. This is the informal circle of advisors known as Jackson's Kitchen Cabinet. They are just crazy. But that's not really a bad thing either. They're going to fight. They're going to fight for their voice to be heard by Jackson. Back and forth, forward and backward. They want their voice to be heard, and they're willing to fight for it. And you can see Jackson kind of creepily over here, looking in here, kind of wanting to figure out what's going on. But they're all going to fight for him to use their advice, and that's not bad. I mean, physically fighting, yes, but competition is a great thing. It breeds excellence. It breeds people to get better. And these guys are literally throwing blows, fighting for that ear of Jackson so that they can be the guys that say, yeah, I'm the one that was behind this. All right, so Native American Indian removal. The Native American removal. Sorry, I'm trying to fix this mic here. White men want all the land east of the Mississippi, so they're going to move the Creek, the Choctaw, the Chickasaw, the Seminole, Cherokee, who own a large number of acres of land. They're going to move them on the other side of the Mississippi, and they're going to force them to do this. In 1828, Georgia legislators, Supreme Court, even goes as far as first, it puts the Cherokee under state jurisdiction and denies the Native Americans legal rights. And it'll go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court, will say that Georgia was wrong for doing this. But, he passes through, Jackson pushes through the Indian Removal Act, even though the Supreme Court decision says they're wrong, he does it anyway. Now, I'm not saying he's innocent in this whatsoever. He does, however, get a bad name. He pushes through the removal. But if you look at the nuts and bolts of it, that's passed in 1830 when he's president. The Trail of Tears, which is the worst portion of the Indian Removal Act, where tons and tons, thousands and thousands and thousands of Cherokee move from one place, their homeland, to another, and thousands of them die. That happens in 1838. That falls under the guise of Martin Van Buren, who will be president after Jackson. Now, I'm not saying Jackson's innocent in this whatsoever. I'm just saying that Jackson was not part of the Trail of Tears. He was part of the Indian Removal Act, but not a part of the Trail of Tears. And you can see here, the movement, 1838 Trail of Tears. These Native American Seminole moved here. We all moved here. They moved here. But then this Cherokee removal out of Georgia and Alabama on the Trail of Tears was the worst one. This is not a good depiction of the Trail of Tears. Most of the Native Americans were walking, not riding horses, not on a wagon, not with things. You don't see any dead bodies lining the road, because that's surely what it would have been. You can see soldiers there who are not going to allow them to stop. So if you died on the trail, you couldn't stop. You couldn't carry them. They couldn't walk. You couldn't stop to bury him, so you got to just leave him there. Horrible, horrible, I know. But again, 1,200 miles walking, it's a long way. If you haven't walked a lot, walking 1,200 miles is a lot of walking. All right, nullification crisis. This comes out of the tariff of 1828 and 1832. It's known as the Tariff of Abomination by South Carolina, and they refused to do it. And their leader is John C. Calhoun, who just happenstance to have been, the vice president in the first for the first presidency, first term of office, for Jackson. And they say, we're not going to do this. And they nullified the tariffs. Well, Jackson's, got to show like he's big and bad because that's Jackson. So he pushes through the force bill through Congress, which authorizes him to use military force against the nullifiers. That's what he's doing outwardly. Inside, behind closed doors, he's negotiating the compromise tariff of 1833, which eases tensions. Now, this puts in a big thing. The nullification crisis is another precedent that is going to be used. The Missouri Compromise, the tariff, the nullification crisis, another precedent that is pushing us 28 years later to the Civil War. Okay. All right, Bank War. Bank War broke out in 1832 when Jackson vetoed an early rechartering of the Bank of the United States. He hates the banks. He doesn't trust banks. He lost a lot of things. He's from the West. Remember, Tennessee is considered West. That's where he's from. He lost a lot of money in the Panic of 1819. They don't trust the banks. They're unreliable. Your money's not insured. The bank gets robbed, your money's gone. And so the business community and Eastern elites attacked the bank veto, which just proves to Jackson that he's doing the right thing because he doesn't get along with those Eastern elites or the business community. And it becomes an issue in the presidential election of 1832. However, he handily whips up on Clay in the presidential election of 1832. And in doing so, it gives him 4 years. Oh, goodness. It gives him 4 years to do what he wants to do. And so he'll actually defund the Bank of the United States. He'll pull all the money from those banks and put them in the state banks. Once the banks destroyed, once he had removed all those federal deposits, he takes all the money out of those state banks and hangs on to them from then on until the Civil War. We're not going to have a national currency. You have to barter, you have to trade, you have to pay in hard currency, meaning gold or silver, in order to pay for things. States will come up with some state money, but that's not as reliable either. And this really just mars his second term of office, where land speculation reaches a frenzy, the bubble bursts, and Democrats are criticized for their economic policies because he just kind of screws this one up. He takes, again, that chip on his shoulder that he's always had that worked for him a lot of times. That's what gets him elected. That's what, wins him the battle in New Orleans, which he turns into becoming presidency, which he uses the bargain to, get all that stuff done. He just screws up here, and hurts himself and his party. And that's where we stop. That's the reading selection 250 through 265.